control, and return. The story of Liam and Valerie. He swore they'd never have a future, but 5 years later, the millionaire CEO moved in next door and met the daughter who had his eyes. The price of fear. Liam Hayes had always believed control was everything. Control built his empire. Control kept his emotions in check, and control allowed him to remain untouched by weakness. At 35, he was already one of the most powerful men in New York City, a self-made millionaire, and the CEO of one of the fastest-growing corporations in the country. Valerie Jones had entered his life quietly, like a breath of spring air. Her eyes held a warmth that could melt the walls he had spent years building around himself. She didn't care about his money. She spoke to him as if he were just a man. That's why he let her in, and that's why it hurt so much when he pushed her away. The night it all ended haunted him. Valerie had been standing in his office, trembling, holding something small and white. When she told him she was pregnant, he only felt fear. His mind flashed to the headlines, the shareholders, the image he had worked years to create. He uttered the words that would follow him. There will be nothing between us, and there will be no one else. Valerie flinched. The sound of the door closing echoed in the emptiness of his office like a sentence. He told himself it was for the best, but the image of her eyes, hurt and shattered, never left him. 5 years of broken glass, 5 years passed, and the emptiness only deepened. He had everything. Penthouses, cars, awards. But nothing felt real. He didn't even know where Valerie had gone. When the board of directors decided to expand operations to a quiet coastal town, Liam accepted without hesitation. The town was small, quiet, and inconsequential, but the silence gave him space to think, to remember. He tried not to imagine a child with his smile, or worse, with his eyes. The Oregon coast and the blue eyes. The small coastal town, the Oregon coast near Cannon Beach, that Liam had moved to was different. The streets were quiet, lined with old trees and the distant hum of the sea. One morning, as he was having his coffee on the porch, he heard laughter. He saw a little girl running across the lawn of the house across the street. She had dark brown hair that curled at the ends, and eyes so vividly blue they almost didn't seem real. The front door of this neighboring house opened, and a woman stepped out. She called the girl's name, April, and the voice was soft, melodic, and painfully familiar. When she stepped into the sunlight, he saw her face. Valerie. Liam froze, his heart pounding. The girl had eyes so familiar they twisted his stomach. He knew it then. The child was his. The confrontation at the driveway. One afternoon, April was in his driveway, scribbling something with chalk. Liam saw her. "Hi," April said. "You're the man who lives here, right?" "Yeah." "Yeah," he said. "You must be, April," she said proudly. "I'm making flowers. Mommy says the ground needs colors before winter comes." Liam crouched down and helped her draw, feeling more human than he had felt in years. When Valerie's voice called from across the street, she approached. "Mommy, look! He helped me make flowers." Valerie's eyes locked onto Liam's, and he saw the storm there. The anger, the confusion, the fear. She turned to him. "Don't do this," she said in a low voice, meant only for him to hear. "Please, Liam, not now." The slow thaw. Weeks passed in a tense truce. Liam tried to be patient, looking for small moments. One afternoon, the rain began to pour as Valerie struggled with her broken-down car near the supermarket. Liam got out of his car, soaked, and without a word, he opened the hood. "You don't have to do this," Valerie said. "I know you can do it," he replied simply. "But let me help. For her." The car started. "Thank you," she said. Days later, Valerie fell ill with a fever. That night, April came to Liam's house asking for help. He rushed over, tucked Valerie into bed, and stayed by her side for hours. When she woke up, she saw him quietly reading, while April slept curled up beside her. "You didn't have to stay," she whispered. "I know," he said softly, "but I wanted to." The next morning he was gone, but there was a note on her nightstand. "Get well soon. I'll bring breakfast over later. L." The test of the fever. The thaw continued. One evening, Valerie invited him for dinner. For the first time in 5 years, they shared a meal, filled with April's laughter. After the girl went to bed, Liam gathered his courage. "I missed this. Being near you," he said. "Don't ruin this with words you can't take back," she said. "I'm not trying to ruin anything," he said. "I just need you to know I'm not the same man. I thought love made me weak, but the truth is not loving you destroyed me anyway." "You destroyed me," Valerie whispered, her eyes filled with tears. "I know," his voice was broken, "and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel that way again." She didn't answer, but as he headed for the door, she stopped him. "You don't have to go yet," she said softly. "Just stay." The home of imperfection months passed. Liam became part of their days, patient, present, mending the past with small actions. One spring afternoon, the three of them went to the park. April was running, chasing butterflies, while Liam and Valerie walked. "I used to think love was something that hurt too much," Valerie said. "But maybe it's not about avoiding the pain. Maybe it's about finding someone who makes it worthwhile." Liam looked at her. "You made it worthwhile, Valerie, even when I didn't deserve you." April ran back, and Liam swept her up in his arms. "You're smiling again," the girl said innocently. "You should always smile. You look happy." Liam looked at Valerie, and for the first time in years, he truly was. Valerie reached for his hand, and their fingers intertwined naturally. Liam leaned down, kissed the back of Valerie's hand, and whispered, "I'm home." Valerie smiled, feeling her heart become whole. And in that moment, she understood that sometimes love doesn't return to you when you are ready. It returns when you finally become the person who deserves it. The commitment test echoes of New York City, the peace in Cannon Beach was settling. Liam had adapted to a slower pace, working remotely for his NYC corporation, and dedicating his afternoons to Valerie and April. However, the world Liam had left behind hadn't forgotten him. One afternoon, his trusted partner, Scott Miller, called with an air of unusual seriousness. "Liam, you need to come back now," Scott said, his voice laced with panic. "We have a problem, a control problem." Scott explained that the board was preparing a vote of no confidence led by a rival investor, Alex Montgomery, to depose Liam. "You need to defend yourself, to remind them who built that empire. If you lose this vote, you lose your seat, and more importantly, you lose your influence to protect your assets," Scott insisted. Liam looked at April, who was laughing and calling him from the sandcastle. For the first time, power didn't feel like something he needed for himself, but a tool to protect his new home. "Send me all the documents. I am not returning to New York. The war will be fought from here," Liam said firmly, hanging up. Strategy in the sand. And when Valerie and April returned home, they found Liam in his study. He explained the situation. Alex Montgomery was trying to seize control of the company. "What are you going to do?" Valerie asked, her heart sinking. She feared his return to peace was only temporary. "I'm going to fight," Liam said, "but not the way they expect. I won't cave, but I won't leave you both either. I'm fighting from here, by video conference, but there's a problem. Montgomery expects me to look weak, out of control, not in the city to defend my empire." Valerie approached him. She saw not the millionaire CEO, but the vulnerable man who had stayed with her in the rain. "Liam," she said, "you taught me the value of control, but I taught you the value of trust. Stop fighting against them and start fighting for them. Valerie smiled. Tomorrow, give them exactly what they don't expect. Give them proof that your real life is more valuable than their boardroom. The vote of confidence. The next morning, at the scheduled time for the no confidence vote, the board met in the glass conference room in New York City. Alex Montgomery sat at the head, looking confident. Liam connected via the giant screen, not from a luxurious hotel, but from his porch in Cannon Beach. The background wasn't an office, but the bright blue Pacific Ocean. He wore a casual shirt, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. When it was Liam's turn, he didn't defend his figures or attack Montgomery. Instead, he spoke calmly about the need to balance growth with life. "Gentlemen," Liam said, with unwavering composure, "Alex Montgomery wants to convince you I've lost control because I'm not sitting in that room. The truth is, for the first time in my life, I have total control. I am no longer a slave to adrenaline. I am the architect of my own time." As he spoke, the porch door opened gently. Valerie walked into the frame, dressed simply, with a coffee mug in her hand. She handed the coffee to Liam, brushing his shoulder with a look of absolute confidence. Then, she knelt and briefly kissed April, who had just run into the frame, giggling. April, completely oblivious to the seriousness of the situation, hugged Liam's legs and called out, "Daddy, the sand crab got away." The conference room in New York fell silent. The board saw, not a weak CEO, but a real man, with a loving family and a life they would secretly envy. Liam looked at his daughter and smiled, a gesture that was not one of vanity, but of genuine affection. "Gentlemen," Liam said to the board, "my daughter's sand crab is my priority right now. But if you think that makes me any less capable of running this company, you're wrong. It makes me better. It makes me know what I'm fighting for." The emotional impact was devastating to Montgomery. The board, tired of the coldness and power battles, saw a glimpse of humanity and stability. The vote was held. Liam did not win unanimously, but he won by a comfortable majority. Montgomery was silenced and resigned the next day. Epilogue. The home anchor. That afternoon, Liam and Valerie were sitting on the porch, embraced. "It worked," Valerie whispered. "Your real life was your best defense." "No, it worked because you trusted me enough to let me take that video call," Liam replied, kissing her forehead. "Now, let's go catch that crab." As the sun set over the Pacific, painting the sky orange and gold, Liam held Valerie's hand, whispering in her ear. He had returned from New York not with a contract, but with a commitment. The man who had sworn control was everything finally understood, that true power lay in connection, and that home was not a place to run from, but a reason to stay. The new balance, a new chalk drawing. After regaining control of his company, Liam redefined success. He focused on strategic decisions and delegated daily work. His life now revolved around April's schedule, Valerie's art classes, and the tide. His financial power, however, didn't lie dormant. Liam, seeing the needs of the coastal town, decided his true redemption had to extend beyond Valerie's door. He founded a nonprofit called The Beacon, focused on improving educational and artistic infrastructure in the Oregon coast area. One morning, April returned from school with sad eyes. "Daddy, my school is broken. The roof leaks and my friends don't have enough coloring books." That phrase ignited Liam's CEO instinct, but this time it was driven by love, not profit. The Beacon Project. With Liam's efficiency and capital, April's school was renovated in 2 months. He didn't stop there. He built a small community center where local women could sell crafts and where Valerie could teach free painting classes to children. "You don't have to do all this, Liam," Valerie said one afternoon. "April and I have forgiven you. You can rest." Liam looked up, his eyes full of sincerity. "I know, honey, but this is the only way I know how to heal. I spent my life building soulless towers. Now I'm building a legacy for my daughter, one she can be proud of. I'm using power to make a difference instead of hoarding more money." He pointed to the blueprints. "And I'm building it in the place where I found you in April. This isn't work. This is home." The truth before April. Once their lives stabilized, only one last big challenge remained: telling April the whole truth. Liam and Valerie sat April down between them. "April, sweetheart," Valerie began. "We need to talk to you about why Daddy wasn't here when you were little." Liam held the girl close. "Daddy was a very scared person, my love. Daddy thought he had to control everything, and that led him to do something very foolish and selfish. Daddy left Mommy and you. Daddy thought if he was alone, he'd be safe. But Daddy was wrong." He spoke honestly, focusing on fear and love. "Mommy was so strong. Mommy raised you alone, and Daddy is so sorry he missed 5 amazing years. Daddy can't get that time back, but Daddy promises you this. Daddy is never leaving again. Daddy is here forever." April listened, her small fingers clutching his shirt. She looked at Valerie, who nodded with tear-filled eyes. "But Daddy isn't scared anymore, right?" April asked. "Daddy won't disappear like the crab, right?" Liam smiled slightly, tears rolling down his cheeks. "Daddy won't disappear, my love. Daddy found his place in the world, and Daddy's place is right here with you and Mommy." April hugged him tight, an innocent and absolute act of forgiveness. Liam felt liberated. The truth was told, and he was accepted, not for his money or power, but because he had the courage to admit his weakness. The final anchor, 6 months later. A hidden debt from his corporate past, a final trap set by Alex Montgomery, forced Liam to liquidate a large portion of his personal assets, including a jet and properties. He calmly paid the debt, refusing to touch the nonprofit's funds. "I'm not touching a single penny of the foundation," Liam told Valerie. "I'll pay the debt with my personal assets. This is the price of my past. Money can be recovered. My family's trust cannot." Liam lost assets, but gained peace. He finally understood the simple lesson April had taught him. Sometimes, to keep the things that matter, you have to let go of the things that don't. Years later, Liam Hayes was known not as the CEO, but as the benefactor of the Oregon coast, the man who used his fortune to rescue schools and support local art. One evening, Liam sat on the beach, watching the sunset with Valerie and April. "You built everything new again, Liam." "No, my love," he whispered. "I just found what I had thrown away." He looked toward the coast where the light from the beacon illuminated the shore, a nightly reminder that even after the biggest storm, there is always a light guiding one home. The New Equilibrium, a new chalk drawing 5 years later. April was 11. Valerie returned from a doctor's appointment with a new charcoal drawing. A great tree with 3 main branches, but a new small shoot growing from the trunk. "What does it mean, darling?" Liam asked. Valerie's eyes filled with tenderness. "It means life is an unfinished work of art, Liam, and ours is about to get a new brushstroke. I'm 3 months pregnant." Liam knelt, placing a hand on her belly. "Thank you," he whispered, for this second chance to face his original fear with love. The ethical ambition crisis. The news of the baby brought immense joy, but also a new challenge: time. Liam's work with the Beacon and National Clean Energy projects was taking up more and more of his schedule. "You need to go to Texas, Liam," Scott told him. "The solar deal is closing. It's your biggest ethical project." Liam looked at his calendar. A 5-day trip meant missing Valerie's important ultrasound. "You need to go," Valerie said, her tone quiet, mirroring the calm acceptance she'd learned in her years alone. "I can go to the doctor alone. I did it once." The phrase hit Liam hard. He remembered his original failure. "No, you won't," Liam said. He interrupted Scott. Send Gabby to Texas. Family comes first. Valerie looked at him with admiration. That's the Liam that makes me happy. That's the Liam you built, my love, he replied. The big sister's gift. April was the most excited. She declared, I want a little sister, to teach her how to draw the waves. April then pulled out her old, worn stuffed rabbit. I'm going to give the rabbit to my little sister, she said, so she won't be scared. The gift was a symbol of healing, handing her future sibling the protection she hadn't had at birth. Epilogue. A true name. Months later, Valerie gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Holding his son, Liam no longer trembled with fear, but with overwhelming emotion. What will his name be? Valerie asked. I want him to be named Daniel, Liam said, for courage, and because I want him to know he was a gift, not a mistake. April nodded. Daniel, the one who will draw the flowers with me. Valerie smiled sweetly and took Liam's hand. Liam Hayes, the man who once swore he'd never have a family, finally completed his. He was not just a CEO, he was a father, a husband, and the anchor of the Oregon coast. Tuyet voi. Toi rut vui, vi bantit cotrien ve Liam va Valerie. De la mo chung moi. Tiep noi cotrien tu viek, sin con trai Daniel, và tập trung vào thử thách cân bằng giữa gia đình và tham vọng đạo đức của Liam. The balancing act. The CEO and the anchor, the two worlds. The arrival of Daniel Hayes brought both immeasurable joy and a stark new reality. Liam's large, open-plan house on the Oregon coast was now filled with the cheerful chaos of two children, the smell of paint from Valerie's studio, and the constant hum of a remote CEO battling global issues. Daniel's birth had solidified Liam's commitment to his family, making his refusal to fly to Texas for the solar deal a defining moment. He was the man who chose the ultrasound over the multi-million-dollar closing. However, the world of the Beacon Foundation and ethical investing was relentless. Liam's former partner, Scott Miller, was brilliant, but lacked Liam's final authority, forcing Liam into crucial, time-sensitive calls that often stretched late into the evening. One afternoon, Liam was on the porch, his voice low and intense, negotiating a land deal for a new wildlife refuge. April, now 12, was trying to show him a newly finished drawing of a tide pool, while Valerie was inside trying to soothe a crying Daniel. April tugged gently on his shirt. Daddy? Look, I drew the sea anemones. Liam, distracted by a sudden objection from the other end of the line, unconsciously pulled away. Not now, sweetheart. Just one more minute, please. April's face crumpled slightly, and she walked away. Valerie saw the exchange from the window, the look in April's eyes, the quiet disappointment that mirrored the look Valerie herself once wore, sent a cold wave through her. The drawing and the disconnect that evening, after Liam finally closed the land deal, a huge win for conservation, he went inside, elated. He found Valerie in the living room, not with Daniel, but sitting alone, staring at April's drawing. We got the land, Val. This refuge is going to be huge for the community, Liam announced, his adrenaline still pumping. He knelt to kiss her. Valerie didn't move. She held up the drawing. It was a beautiful, detailed rendering of the tide pool, but April had drawn a tiny, isolated figure standing on the edge, looking out at the water alone. The figure was wearing a suit. You won the land, Valerie said, her voice quiet and even. But you lost 5 minutes with your daughter. You were here, Liam. Physically here. But you were still miles away, in a world where urgency trumps presence. Liam felt the old fear return. Not the fear of losing money, but the fear of failing as a father again. I didn't realize, he stammered. It was the final push, Val. If I hadn't closed it right then, we would have lost the land to a developer. I was fighting for the Beacon, for our legacy. Legacy is wonderful, Valerie conceded, placing the drawing gently down. But your legacy is also what Daniel remembers when he's 3 and you're missing his birthday call. It's what April remembers when she stops asking you to look at her art. You beat the corporate monster, Liam, but you haven't slain the monster of ambition. The re-anchoring. The conversation hit Liam harder than any boardroom defeat. He realized his focus had simply shifted. He traded the addiction of accumulating wealth for the addiction of doing good. Both stole his time. The next morning, Liam made a new rule. He moved his phone and laptop out of the main living area into his detached study and implemented the 4 p.m. wall. After 4 p.m., no calls, no emails, no exceptions, unless the matter involved life, death, or fire. Scott was instructed to handle all other crises. The first few weeks were excruciating. He missed important follow-ups, and a small, non-critical deal was delayed. He felt the familiar anxiety, the feeling of losing control, but the rewards were immediate. He taught April to fish for sand perch and helped her build a magnificent, sprawling sandcastle that lasted 3 tides. He spent an entire afternoon simply rocking Daniel to sleep, watching the clouds move over the Pacific. One evening, April came into the living room. Instead of going to him, she placed her drawing supplies on the coffee table and began drawing a simple picture of a family holding hands. "What are you drawing, sweetie?" Liam asked, without looking at his phone, which was miles away. "Us," April said simply. "But I need you to draw the sun, Daddy. You always draw the best sun." Liam picked up the crayon. As he drew the bright, imperfect circle, he felt the true weight of the moment. He realized that this imperfect sun, the one drawn in the quiet of his coastal home, was worth more than all the skyscrapers he had built. The anchor held firm, the true definition of power. Years passed. The 4 p.m. wall became a permanent policy, enforced fiercely by April and Valerie. The Beacon Foundation thrived, guided by Liam's strategic vision, but run by a dedicated team. Liam was in his late 40s now. He was back in New York City for a rare event, the official dedication of a massive clean energy fund he had established. He was the main speaker, standing on a stage overlooking the skyline that had once defined him. He looked out at the sea of executives. Alex Montgomery was nowhere to be seen, but Scott Miller was there, beaming. Liam didn't talk about quarterly returns or market caps. He told the story of a 5-year-old girl, a sand crab, and a tiny figure drawn alone on the edge of a tide pool. "I spent half my life believing power was control over markets, over people, over my own heart," Liam said into the microphone. "But the real power isn't in what you dominate. It's in what you choose to give up." He paused, a genuine, peaceful smile on his face. "I chose to give up the illusion of total control for the reality of presence. I chose 5 minutes with my daughter over millions of dollars. And in doing so, I became the CEO I was always meant to be. One who knows his true value is not measured by the size of his assets, but by the strength of his anchor." Later that night, Liam was back on the Oregon coast. He was on the porch, watching the light of the beacon sweep across the dark water. Valerie brought him a mug of coffee. "You were amazing today," she whispered. "I was just telling the truth," Liam said, pulling her close. "The control I crave now isn't over a corporation. It's control over my time so I can ensure my greatest investment, my family, never feels neglected." He looked out at the ocean, now fully understanding the lesson of the anchor. You don't fight the tide. You choose to be strong enough to stay rooted when the waves crash. And in that quiet, moonlit moment, Liam knew his journey of balancing power and peace wasn't over. It was a daily commitment, a promise renewed with every sunset, every bedtime story, and every imperfect crayon drawing. Tu yet voi, toi rut vui vi bantit câu chuyện về Liam và Valerie. Đây là một chương mới, tiếp tục hành trình cân bằng của Liam và giới thiệu một thách thức bất ngờ từ quá khứ. The test of the anchor, The unexpected return. The calm before the storm. 5 years after Daniel's birth, the Hayes family had found a rhythm. Liam was 50, his hair flecked with gray, his face showing the lines of stress, but also of genuine happiness. The Beacon Foundation was now a national model for sustainable development. April, now a confident 17-year-old, was preparing for college. Her artistic talent fully bloomed. Daniel, at 5, was a whirlwind of energy. Already skilled at finding the biggest sand crab and demanding Liam's undivided attention. Liam's routine was sacred. Mornings dedicated to strategic work, afternoons reserved for family. The 4 p.m. wall was his fortress. One sunny afternoon, Valerie and Liam were sitting on the porch, watching April try to teach Daniel how to use an easel on the sand. "We did it, Liam," Valerie said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "We actually built the life we wanted." "We built it on trust, Val," Liam corrected, kissing her hair, "and on the principle that a simple home is worth more than 1,000 glass towers." The shadow from Manhattan. The peace was shattered by a surprise visitor. A sleek black sedan, utterly out of place on the rugged coastal road, pulled up to their driveway. A woman stepped out. She was impeccably dressed, radiating the cold, sharp efficiency of Manhattan high finance. Liam instantly recognized her. Olivia Stone, a ruthless and brilliant investor who had been a key ally of Alex Montgomery during the attempted coup a decade ago. Valerie stiffened. The past had just driven up to their doorstep. "Liam Hayes," Olivia said, her voice cutting through the salty air. "It's been too long." Liam stood, his shoulders instantly tensing. "Olivia, I wasn't expecting you." "I'm sure. I'm here on behalf of an investment group, Liam. We know about your ethical investments, and we're impressed. Your name carries weight now, not just money. We want you back in the game. The big game." Olivia then dropped the bomb. "Alex Montgomery is officially retiring. He's selling his entire portfolio, including his majority stake in a clean energy infrastructure company that he stole from one of our previous allies. This company is key to your Beacon initiative. The sale is happening this week. The price is astronomical, and the timeline is brutal." She paused, letting the information sink in. "We need your strategic mind. You can take down Montgomery once and for all, reclaim the company for ethical purposes, and fund the Beacon for the next century. But you have to fly to New York tomorrow, and you have to put your full, undivided attention into this for 2 weeks." The hard choice. The offer was Liam's ultimate test. It wasn't about money. It was about purpose and redemption. He could secure the Beacon's future and erase the last vestige of the man who tried to destroy him. But 2 weeks in New York meant shattering the 4 p.m. wall, missing Daniel's first school play, and leaving Valerie and April alone. "The answer is no, Lieutenant," Liam said instantly. Olivia looked genuinely shocked. "Are you serious? You would risk your life's work, your legacy, for a kid's play? That's not control, Liam. That's weakness." "No, Olivia," Liam said, his voice slow and lethal, the old CEO authority returning, but repurposed. "That's a boundary. My family is not negotiable. If I can't win this deal remotely, then I don't deserve to win it at all." Olivia smirked. "You've changed, Liam. You're soft." "Fine. We'll fight your war for you, but you'll have to send us the one person who knows your strategy best. April. She's brilliant, just finished high school, and she's ready. Let her come to New York for the summer. It would be the internship of a lifetime. The suggestion was preposterous, yet strangely tempting. It offered a middle ground, a way to fight without abandoning his post. The true meaning of the anchor. Later that night, Liam and Valerie talked in the gentle light of their bedroom. "She's a distraction," Valerie said, referring to Olivia. "A beautifully tailored distraction from the peace we built." "But the deal, Val," Liam sighed, running a hand through his hair. "If we get that company, the Beacon can run on its own. It's the ultimate ethical victory. And if you go, you risk everything," Valerie countered. "And April, sending her to that world. It's the world that broke you, Liam. Don't let her touch the glass towers." Liam looked at his wife, whose eyes reflected the unwavering strength he relied on. "I won't go, and I won't send April," Liam decided. "But I will fight. I'll fight remotely, with everything I have." Valerie took his hand. "Good. Now, let me show you what you're fighting for." She led him to Daniel's room. Daniel was fast asleep, a peaceful smile on his face. April's old stuffed rabbit clutched tightly in his hand. Liam looked at the boy, then at the rabbit, the symbol of the protection he had once denied. He realized the fight wasn't in the boardroom, but in the heart of his home. The anchor held fast. Liam knew he would win the battle, not with physical presence or brute force, but with the focused, disciplined power of a man who finally understood his non-negotiable value: home. He picked up his phone, not to call Olivia, but to rally his remote team. The battle for the ultimate ethical victory was on, and it would be fought from the quiet integrity of the Oregon coast. Tuyệt vời! Chúng ta hãy tiếp tục câu chuyện với chương mới, tập trung vào cuộc chiến từ xa của Liam chống lại New York và phản ứng của April trước đề nghị của Olivia. The remote war. The 4 p.m. wall holds the digital boardroom. Liam's refusal to fly to New York stunned Olivia Stone and ignited the most intense professional battle of his life. He gathered his team, including Scott Miller and his top legal counsel, and they established a war room in Liam's detached coastal study. The deal, the acquisition of the clean energy infrastructure company, NovaSource, from the retiring Alex Montgomery, was a high-stakes, ruthless game of financial chicken. Montgomery knew Liam's ethical drive and demanded face-to-face negotiation, forcing Liam to rely entirely on his team and his own remote authority. The difference now was the 4 p.m. wall. The world's largest ethical acquisition had to pause every day at 4 p.m. sharp. Scott, battling the aggressive lawyers in New York, called Liam at 3:58 p.m. one day, his voice strained. "Liam, they're cornering us on the liability clause. Montgomery wants a concession that will compromise the Beacon's future funding. We need your final decision now, or we walk away." Liam felt the old familiar pressure, the siren call of adrenaline telling him to seize control, to skip dinner, to fight until midnight. He looked at the clock, 3:59 p.m. "Scott," Liam said, his voice calm, "send them the revised terms immediately. If they don't accept by the close of business, we withdraw the offer entirely. I trust your judgment on the terms, but not their delay tactics. Stick to the boundary. And Scott, it's 4 p.m. Call me tomorrow morning." Liam closed his laptop with a decisive snap. The beach and the briefcase. He emerged from the study, leaving the intense negotiation behind him, and found Valerie and Daniel waiting by the back door. "Ready for the beach, Daddy?" Daniel, now 5, shouted, holding a small shovel. For the next 2 hours, Liam was simply Daddy. He was completely present, focusing on Daniel's endless quest for treasure and listening to Valerie describe the new community art project. The financial crisis was forgotten. The next morning, Scott called with the news. "They caved, Liam. Montgomery accepted the terms at 5:30 p.m. He thought you were bluffing, but when we didn't answer his emergency call, he panicked. We got NovaSource." Liam smiled, a deep, genuine smile of satisfaction. He had won the biggest deal of his career, not by sacrificing his boundaries, but by enforcing them. He proved that commitment to family was not a weakness, but a potent negotiating strategy. April's choice. The victory was massive, but the second challenge, Olivia Stone's internship offer to April, remained. April, who had been focused on her college applications, was intrigued by the idea of an intense summer in Manhattan, even if it was with a rival. "Mom, Dad," April said one evening at dinner. "Ms. Stone's office called again. She wants me to fly out next week. It's a huge opportunity for a pre-law student, even if she's a corporate shark." Valerie looked at Liam, expecting him to veto the idea immediately. Liam, however, had learned to lead with trust, not control. "April, that's your decision," he said calmly. "But you need to know what you're walking into. That world is intoxicating. It will try to convince you that your worth is measured by your title and the size of your paycheck." "The offer wasn't an olive branch, honey," Valerie added gently. "It was a subtle attempt to lure your father back to the city. Through you." April, mature beyond her years, nodded. "I know. But I also know what matters. You taught me that the real anchor is the boundary you set for yourself." She looked at her father. "I'm grateful for the offer, but my summer internship is going to be here, at the Beacon. I want to help establish the legal framework for the wildlife refuge you just won. I need to learn to fight for the things that matter, not the things that glitter." Liam felt a swell of pride that overshadowed the NovaSource victory. His daughter hadn't just rejected the glass towers. She had claimed her own place in his ethical legacy. The full circle. Months later, with April happily immersed in her work at the Beacon and Daniel starting kindergarten, Liam and Valerie found themselves in the original home where their story began. One quiet afternoon, Liam found Valerie in her studio, finishing a large, vibrant painting. It was an abstract representation of their family. Bold colors representing Liam's drive, soft textures representing Valerie's love, and bright, chaotic lines for the children. At the very center of the canvas, she had painted a single, solid anchor, surrounded by a subtle golden light. "It's finished," Valerie said, wiping paint from her hands. "It's called the anchor. It's perfect," Liam whispered, pulling her into an embrace. "You taught me that the strongest position isn't always the one with the most power, but the one with the most to lose. And you, April, and Daniel are my beautiful, non-negotiable risk." Liam knew the battles wouldn't end. Ambition would always knock. But every evening, when he closed his laptop and heard the sound of the Pacific tide, he remembered the words he spoke into the microphone in New York. "The control I crave now is control over my time, so I can ensure my greatest investment, my family, never feels neglected." And every day the anchor held. Tuyệt vời. Chúng ta hãy tiếp tục câu chuyện với một chương mới, khám phá thách thức tiếp theo trong cuộc sống cân bằng của Liam. Một vấn đề cá nhân bất ngờ buộc anh phải đối diện lại với quá khứ ở New York theo một cách hoàn toàn mới. The Price of Presence. A call from the past, the annual retreat. It had been 3 years since Liam won the NovaSource battle remotely. April was flourishing in her first year of law school. Daniel was thriving in elementary school. And the Beacon was hosting its annual leadership retreat on the Oregon coast. Liam was relaxed, leading a workshop on ethical leadership and time boundaries. He felt content, the embodiment of the principles he taught. Just as the session concluded, Scott Miller, Liam's partner, approached him with a solemn expression, holding a phone. "It's New York, Liam. It's urgent. And it's not business," Scott murmured. "It's your former rival, Alex Montgomery." Liam frowned. "Montgomery? I thought he'd vanished completely after the NovaSource deal." "He did. But he's not calling to gloat. He's calling from a hospital," Scott said, handing over the phone. The ghost in the hospital, Liam took the call, instantly recognizing the cold, brittle voice of his old nemesis. "Hayes, Montgomery rasped, his voice weak. "I don't have much time. I'm dying. Cancer. And I need a favor. The only one I'll ever ask you." Liam was silent. He felt no triumph, only an unsettling emptiness. "What is it, Alex?" "My son, Ethan. He's 20, he's brilliant, but he's a mess. He's completely lost in that corporate machine I built. No family, no direction. I haven't been a father, Hayes. I taught him that control and money were everything. And now, he's completely alone." Montgomery's voice cracked. "He won't listen to my lawyers. He won't listen to his mother. But he respects you. He saw how you beat me and still held on to your family. I need you to go to New York. Find him. Don't mention me. Just show him that there's a life outside the glass walls. Be the father I never was, just for a week. Please, Hayes, before he loses everything." The plea was raw, desperate, and utterly sincere. Liam realized this was the real price of Montgomery's ruthless life, not the loss of money, but the destruction of his own family. The intersecting destinies. Liam hung up, shaken. The decision was immediately clear. He couldn't refuse. It was a chance to save a young man from making the exact same mistakes he had made 20 years ago. "I have to go, Val," Liam told Valerie that evening. "For a week. I have to go back to New York." Valerie looked at him, not with fear or resentment, but with understanding. "Go," she said simply. "But go as the man you are now, not the man you were then. Go as Daniel's father and April's father. Show him the anchor, Liam. Don't just talk about it." April, who overheard the conversation, walked in. "New York? Dad, you never go to New York." "This is different, April," Liam explained. "This young man needs help. He needs someone to show him the way out of the city, just like your mother showed me." April thought for a moment. "Take my camera, Dad, and take pictures of the park, the street performers, the subway stations. Show him the parts of the city that don't glitter. Show him the real people, not the executives." Liam smiled, kissing his daughter's forehead. He packed a small bag, no suits, just casual wear, and April's camera. The week in the city. Liam flew to New York the next day. He found Ethan Montgomery in a sterile, impersonal penthouse high above Manhattan, staring blankly at the cityscape. Ethan was courteous, but cold, clearly confused by this sudden visit from his father's old rival. Liam didn't mention Alex. He spent the week showing Ethan the city he had forgotten existed. He took him to a small, bustling art gallery in Brooklyn, reminding Ethan of the warmth of creativity. He made Ethan use the subway, forcing him to be among the real people of the city, not just those in the luxury cabs. He showed Ethan April's photos of the Oregon coast, the raw power of the ocean, the quiet beauty of the woods. On the 5th day, they sat in Central Park. Liam finally spoke about his own life. "I used to have this penthouse, Ethan," Liam said, gesturing to the gleaming towers. "I had everything your father has, and I was miserable. I chose fear over love. It cost me 5 years with my daughter, April." Liam showed Ethan the picture of Daniel, April, and Valerie on the beach. "I built an empire on control, but I found my life on a quiet coast, built on the principle of presence." Ethan, who had maintained his icy facade all week, finally cracked. He looked at the photo, then at Liam. "Your life is real," Ethan whispered, his voice full of envy and exhaustion. "Mine is just a balance sheet." Liam put a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Your life is an unwritten chapter, Ethan. Go home. Don't repeat our mistakes. Find your anchor." The return with a purpose. When Liam returned to the Oregon coast, he was greeted by Daniel and April, who rushed him with joyous hugs. Valerie watched, her smile warm. "Did you find your anchor, Dad?" April asked, taking her camera back. "I found his, honey," Liam said, giving her a hug. "And in doing so, I reinforced mine." Days later, Liam received a call. Alex Montgomery had passed away. But before he died, he sent Liam a final typed message. "Thank you, Hayes. You gave my son the chance I never gave him. You proved that control is the weakness of a fool, and presence is the power of a good man. I finally understand the real currency. Liam looked out at the Pacific, holding Valerie's hand. He hadn't just saved a young man. He had earned the forgiveness of his greatest rival. His trip to New York hadn't been a risk to his stability, but the ultimate proof of its strength. The anchor held, and it was strong enough to save others from the very tide that had once almost swept him away. Tuyệt vời! Chúng ta hãy tiếp tục câu chuyện với một chương mới, khám phá tác động lâu dài của chuyến đi New York của Liam và sự phát triển của Daniel khi cậu bé lớn lên trong di sản. The Anchor. The legacy and the next generation. Daniel's question 4 years passed. Liam was in his mid-50s, happily focused on the strategic direction of the Beacon and his family. April was in her senior year of law school, specializing in environmental policy, a direct extension of her father's ethical work. Daniel was 9, bright, curious, and the center of Liam's world. One cool afternoon, Daniel was helping Liam clean up the remnants of a winter storm on the beach. Daniel, who had the same intensely blue eyes as his father, looked up at Liam. "Daddy, why do you always say the anchor is the most important thing?" Daniel asked, scraping wet sand off a piece of driftwood. "April says it's your best idea, even better than the Beacon." Liam smiled. "It's not an idea, buddy. It's a promise. When I was younger, I thought being strong meant controlling everything. Money, people, and my own fear. I built a huge glass building in New York to prove it." He pointed towards the horizon. "But that building was just glass. It was fragile. Then I met your mom and April, and they showed me that true strength is choosing to stay rooted, even when the biggest waves, the waves of ambition or crisis, try to pull you away. The anchor means choosing home, every single time." Daniel nodded seriously, filing the principal away. A gift from Ethan. A week later, a large, meticulously wrapped package arrived for Liam, shipped from New York. It was from Ethan Montgomery, the young man Liam had helped steer away from the corporate abyss. Inside the package was a breathtaking sculpture, a minimalist, abstract piece crafted from polished steel and salvaged driftwood from the Pacific. The steel formed the shape of an enormous, powerful wave, but the driftwood was carved into a perfect, heavy anchor, holding the wave motionless. Attached was a simple card. "Liam, I sold the penthouse. I'm moving to Colorado to study sustainable architecture. Thank you for showing me the alternative currency. Your anchor is strong enough to hold 2 families now." "Ethan," Liam showed the sculpture to Valerie. "He's found his way, Val. He chose the driftwood over the steel." Valerie looked at the artwork, her eyes shining. "He found his own beach, Liam, and you gave him the map." The sculpture, which symbolized Liam's former life restrained by his present truth, was placed proudly on the porch. The April test. April's law school graduation approached, bringing the final, most personal challenge to Liam's principles. She was offered a prestigious, high-paying job with a top environmental law firm in Washington, D.C., a career path that promised significant power and influence. "It's the chance to change policy on a national level, Dad," April explained, her eyes alight with ambition. "I can use my law degree to protect all the beaches the Beacon can't reach." Liam felt immense pride, but also the protective, anxious fear of a father who knew the price of that world. The job would require long hours, constant travel, and a life immersed in the hyper-competitive political landscape, the antithesis of the anchor life. "It's a wonderful opportunity, April," Liam said carefully. "But D.C. has a way of convincing you that the urgency of the capital is the only reality. Remember why you went to law school? Was it to win arguments, or to protect the tide pools?" April understood the nuance immediately. "It's to protect the tide pools, Dad, but I can't do that effectively just from the coast." Liam knew he couldn't control her choice. He had to trust the legacy he had built in her heart. The unspoken answer. On the day of her graduation, April stood on the stage, delivering a powerful commencement speech. Liam, Valerie, and Daniel watched proudly from the audience. April began by talking about the law, but ended by talking about the beach. When I was a little girl, April told the packed auditorium, my parents taught me a single, most important principle. The anchor. It's not a philosophy of retreat, but a principle of focus. My father, who built empires, taught me that power isn't measured by what you acquire, but by what you choose to prioritize. She looked directly at Liam in the audience. I'm immensely honored by the DC job offer, and by the chance to fight policy battles. But I've learned that you can't protect the ocean if you lose the sight of the water. April announced her decision. She would be joining the Beacon full-time as the chief legal counsel, focused on local and state environmental legislation. My first case will be defending our own Oregon coast, April declared, the audience roaring with applause. I'm choosing the tide pool over the Capitol. I'm choosing the anchor. Liam felt the tears streaming down his face. It was the greatest validation of his life. His daughter hadn't just adopted his principles. She had perfected them. That evening, as the family celebrated back on the Oregon coast, Liam finally understood. His journey to find balance wasn't just for him. It was the inheritance he gave to his children. The anchor was secured not in steel, but in the heart of the next generation. The future was not just safe, it was in the hands of those who truly understood its value.